Hey everyone, it's me, the Afro Hamurai. That's a baby blanket, and we're talking about earplugs. So the way that I'm going to do this video is I'm going to give a bit of an overview as to why I decided to get earplugs. Then I'm going to go through each of the individual earplugs as little mini reviews that I got, and then give you a comparison at the end so you get an idea as to what sort of things are out there and maybe what you might want to look for. So why did I decide to get earplugs? Because I got advertised them. It wasn't just being advertised them though. What I quite liked was actually walking around using my noise cancelling headphones just generally, even without having any music on, because I found it really good for focusing. With noise cancelling headphones or noise cancelling earbuds, it's relatively easy to jump into listening to music or a podcast instead, and if I'm knitting, then that's fine. But if I'm wanting to read through a book or like learn some coding or something, that can sometimes distract me from what I'm doing, and then I kind of feel like I'm not able to focus and zone in exactly on what I'm trying to get done. I was skeptical at getting earplugs because I was worried about what they were actually going to be like, right? Like my experience of something close to that is those in-ear headphones that jam straight into your ear and kind of go quite deep and feel relatively uncomfortable, and I was worried that that would be the experience. Luckily, with these three at least, I haven't really felt that. Kind of. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the first set of earplugs that I purchased, the Happy Ears Ocean Plastics. These ones are so good that I bought them for myself, and I then bought a pair for my girlfriend and then another pair for myself, so that when the ones I had eventually either went walkabouts or if they wore down, I wouldn't have to wait for another set. I could just use them straight away. The Happy Ears have a bit more of an oval shape, and that actually fits my ear a lot better. It also means that I don't have to jam it straight in. It can kind of sit a bit further out and just block my ear as it should do, which means that once you've got them in, you really don't feel like they're in there, except that you can hear a lot less stuff. The Happy Ears themselves come in 3 different sizes, small, medium, and large. I would suggest that if you're gonna go for Happy Ears, you do like what I did and try the Discovery Pack, because then that way you can get all of the 3 different sizes and actually figure out which one you want. So then if you want to buy further ones, you just know what size you are straight away. My first test with these were just to try them around the house, turn the washing machine on. They were very good. They blocked out most of the washing machine, and I could actually get some reading done, and I even had a little bit of a nap with the washing machine still on. They were good. I liked them. Going to sleep with them was a great experience. So I popped them in, had the noise out, went to sleep, and I noticed how much quieter everything was. And I know that that sounds like obvious, like of course it's going to be quiet, they're earplugs. But you don't notice how much sound there still is even when you have everything turned off. Even just like little bits and pieces of wind and rustling, all of that was gone. It was just completely quiet. And I think I had the best sleep that I had in a while having those, to the point that when I went to sleep on another day without them, everything just felt really loud. Overall, they're really comfortable. I found that it was quite difficult to get the hang of getting the seal on the first couple of tries with them, but now that I've had them for like a good few months, I've gotten used to how they need to go in to get the best seal and how they need to go in to be as stable as they can be. So now I can sleep with them. I use them on the tube, I use them on the bus. They're brilliant. If you've gotten this far in the video and you're like, yep, the Happy Ears sound good, just stop the video here and just go and buy some Happy Ears. They are really good. I don't think you'll be disappointed with them. The one thing that I don't like about the Happy Ears is their case, and it's not that it's a bad case. It's small, it fits just the Happy Ears. The gotcha for me is that it's so small and doesn't have any sort of hook on it. It means you gotta find a place where that's gonna go. Now, if you have jeans, or like with me and my trousers, if you have trousers that have a little pocket inside their pocket, you can pop it in there, but then they can still kind of feel like they get lost if you put anything else. Like if I put the Happy Ears into the tiny inside pocket this has, and then I put my keys inside the pocket on the outside of that, I can't find them without having to do a bit of rooting around. Once I found them, fine, I just pop them in. It's just kind of hard to find. It also means that they're really easy to lose. If I don't put them in the same place on my bedside table, if I accidentally leave them in some trousers, I'm not going to feel them because they're really small, and I've almost accidentally washed them. However, their small size means that they're convenient to take around with you, so really, you don't have to worry about where they're going to fit as long as you have a place that you know they're going to consistently be. I just wish there was a little strap on their case, which is something that the next two actually have. Loop as a company do multiple different earplugs. They do their Engage, their Experience, and their Quiet. I got the Engage and the Quiet because the Engage kind of fit me more than the Experience. The Engage is something that they've made that's relatively new, that's meant to make it easier for you to hear voices compared to everything else, but still bring all of the noise down. And then the Quiet are meant to be really quiet. Let's start with the Quiet because those are quite close to what the Happy Ears would do in terms of noise isolation, except that they're a bit of a different design. They're a lot more conventional in terms of how they fit into the ear. They fit in a bit more like just in-ear headphones, but because they're really lightweight and really soft in the ear, they don't feel uncomfortable. You get a little bit of the pressure when you put them in, like you kind of have to pop them in and then twist them around to make sure that you don't accidentally destroy your eardrum. But once they're in, and once you've had them in for a little bit of time, they feel comfortable enough. I don't get irritated by them as I would with in-ear headphones. All of the Quiets are made out of a silicone material. The gotcha with that silicone is that it's bendy, which means that it's kind of hard to use just the ring to insert them. You kind of have to use the ring and then also the bit that goes in your ear, which kind of goes against how they say to insert them. I still find the Happy Ears a little bit more comfortable, but I do find that the Loop Quiets are easier to get a seal with because they're a bit more conventional, and maybe just because I'm used to how they're meant to fit into my ear compared to the Happy Ears. They also have a slightly bigger case, but one that has a little strap on it so you can attach it to keys and stuff, so it's really easy to keep these in much better places. The case itself isn't much bigger. It's bigger than the Happy Ears, but I can still pop it into any pocket that I'd need to. I find that they sit in quite fine as long as they're on their own. The cool thing about the Loop Quiets is that they come with different ear tips, which means that if one side uses medium and one side uses large, which sometimes happens with me, you can have a mix and match and make sure that they give you a seal that is still really comfortable. That's a bit better than the Happy Ears, where you kind of have to decide to get both of them in one size. But then I also find that because the Happy Ears flex a bit more, they tend to fit a much wider range of sizes within the sizes that they have, if that makes sense. I'd also assume that because they're a bit closer to what you get with just standard ear tips for in-ear headphones, if you wanted to put like foam tips on these or something, you probably could. You just need to know what sort of measurements they take for like the little stalk that you pop them on, and then you'll be good to go. I tested them in the same way that I did the Happy Ears, so I used them on the tube to work, I used them for some sleeping, I used them just generally around the house, and I found that they were just a little bit better than the Happy Ears in every single case. The only exception being that I found that once I took these out, my ears kind of just felt a bit damp because of how much they were isolating and how they sealed compared to the Happy Ears. They were comfortable to wear, but popping them in and out wasn't the same as what I expected with those. The Loop Engage earplugs are different to the other ones that I've tried in that they have a little sound channel and an acoustic filter that when you pop them in will still let you hear the outside world, but just a little bit less loud. They offer the least amount of isolation, but specifically with the Plus ones, you get this Loop Mute, which is like a little silicone circle you put onto the inside of the earplugs, and it ends up adding an extra 5 decibels of noise isolation. Now you might think, what is that going to do? It's not going to do much. It somehow changes these entirely and makes them the best of Loop's earplugs in my opinion for just general use, because you can choose whether you want these to be earplugs that just make everything a little bit less loud but still let you have a conversation with people, or you can choose to add the loop into them and you can make it really quiet, still be able to kind of have a conversation but focus a bit more on reducing a lot more of that noise. The Loop Engage's mute doesn't make them as good as the Quiets, because even though you're covering that channel, you're still covering where there's air, so the body of the loop can still let some of the sound come through that air and into the channel, but they do feel like they actually add a lot more. Because of that, however, I find that the Engages are a bit trickier to actually fit into your ear without the mute in. Essentially, with the mute, you kind of get that vacuum seal that you'd expect to get from when you use earplugs, where it feels like once they go in, they kind of push air out, and that helps to keep them in a bit more. Whereas with the Loop Engages, if you don't have the mute in, because that channel is still letting air in and out, you put them in, and it doesn't feel secure, even though it kind of is, which means that you end up trying lots of different ear tips just to figure out what it is that you can get to give you that feel. The Engage Plus is more expensive than the other two, but they do give you foam ear tips alongside the silicone ones. I tend to sometimes jump between the two of them, but I've kind of rested on the silicones as ones that tend to be the most comfortable at the moment for me, but I might switch again. The foams come in small, medium, and large, and then the silicones come in extra small, small, medium, and large, with medium silicone fitted by default in the box. They use the same case as all of Loop's other ones, except that the one that I got was a see-through case rather than a white one, because I'm guessing plus means you're meant to see them through the case. I don't know. And the Engage Pluses are made out of acrylic instead of being made out of just like a silicone material, which I find makes them a lot easier to pop in and to manipulate, because then you have a hard handle. That means you don't have to push in as much to be able to get the fit, and instead you can do a lot more of the twisting that they suggest you do, which I'm guessing is better for your ears. So I had to do multiple bits of testing with the Engage's mute out and in. With it out, it did exactly what it said on the tin. It turned everything down just a little bit. It doesn't make it completely unnoticeable what the sound around you is, but it did still make sound manageable. Not as manageable as something like the Quiets or the Happy Ears did, but they were still pretty good. Sleeping without the mute in basically did about the same as just covering my head with my hand if I wanted to. It didn't really do much. In fact, that just there did more than what the Engages do for my noise isolation in sleep, but that's because the mute's out and you still get sound in. On the tube, having them without the mute was basically useless, not because of the fact that it didn't do any noise reduction, but because the noises on the tube are so loud and are very percussive all at once that really you don't notice that the loop Engages are there without having anything to help increase their noise isolation. With the mute, they're essentially worse performing Quiets with a slight focus on actually hearing voices. So if you're like me and you like sleeping with sometimes the radio or the TV on, having the Engage Pluses in means that you can have everything just turned down a bit, especially with the mute in. You can still kind of pick up on their sounds and what they're saying, but everything else is just kind of dulled out. The Engage Plus and mute performed slightly worse on the tube than the other two, but that's expected because they don't isolate as much noise in that combination. But they did perform well enough that if these were your daily earplugs, it would be fine on the tube, and then also give you the opportunity to have them in to have actual conversations with people. Now to summarize, starting with the one that I think is the least good, which I would say is the Quiet. That's not me saying that the Quiets are bad. They offer really good noise isolation at a price that I think is great. They're fashionable, which means that you can wear them outside if you want to. The case is the better of the two cases in my opinion, because it's something that's a bit bigger, a bit easier to clip onto things like keys and so on, so you can make sure that you have them around with you, which is most important. Also means you're not going to lose them, and being able to replace those ear tips gives them a bit more longevity, especially because you can just decide to get other ear tips if you don't like the ones that they come with. Probably. I think that the Quiets make the most sense if you really want to just knuckle down and focus, or if you want to use them for sleeping, or maybe if you're using them in a motorbike or something like that. But other than those things where you're looking to get essentially the most noise isolation from your earplugs and still keep them looking fashionable, I don't see other uses for them. My Quiets are still ones that I use for going to sleep. Sometimes I use them when I'm going out and about, but it's mostly a sleeping one because, you know, otherwise I have to take them out and then put them back in. If I had to put one of these earplugs in second place, I would have to unfortunately say that it's the Happy Ears. Not that the Happy Ears are miles worse than the Engage Pluses. In fact, I actually think that the Happy Ears are better in a lot of regards. Firstly, you can get ocean plastic ones, which means you're basically making sure that you're getting environmentally friendlier earplugs compared to what you would get from the store where they'll just use plastic whatever and then they just end up in landfill. At least you're making sure that you're taking the trash out of the water and using it to do something good. The case is, I think, the only bit, or at least the main bit, that makes me go, And it's mostly because I'm worried about losing them. It's really hard to love something and use something if you're worried about not being able to find where you've put it afterwards. At home, it's fine because I have a place that I put them. But when I want to take them out and about, there's always the worry of, okay, if I put them in my pocket, could they accidentally jump out because it's such a small case and I would never notice? And if someone else doesn't notice, is that basically my earplugs gone? Like, you know, that's a bit of a difficult thing to deal with. And it's hard for me to completely ignore that and to ignore that part of what might be your experience of using them. Of course, they're still relatively fashionable. You can get colorful ones, you can get recycled ones. I would still suggest the ocean plastics because they do a little bit more noise isolation. I think they'd be great if you were going to an event because they're really small to take with you, really easy to put in, and it means that you can bring down your noise without necessarily missing anything that's happening from someone on stage. I would say that first place is the Engage Pluses, and it's a really small difference, and it literally just comes down to the fact that with the Engage Pluses, you have convenience and you have the option of switching your noise isolation. It's great to have earplugs that mean that you can still talk to people and still get some work done, and then pop the mute in and just have a little bit more of that noise isolation. At the same time, I find that the experience of using them without the mute and using them for conversations is really difficult because you might not be able to get them to stay in all the way, or it might feel like they're falling out, and that's something to kind of get used to. They also come with a case that I think is the better of the two because it's easier to make sure that you don't lose. And that's my thought of the earplugs that I've tried. I know there's some other ones. There's some Soundbrennan ones that have like a little slidey thingy or something like that. I haven't tried those because I don't think I need that level of granularity. I kind of just want it to be either a little bit or a lot, and that would be my entire thing. But yeah, tell me what you think. If you've tried earplugs, let me know what you've tried down below. I might even do a review of some if you mention them. Yeah, cool.